I found myself frustrated and almost at times a little bit bitter because I've had blessings, wonderful blessings. People putting my name on the temple prayer roll, people fasting for me fasting, everyone praying.
Yeah.
And there was no relief and there were no answers coming, nothing.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I stay.
I'm staying here.
To whom else shall we go?
The Why I Stay podcast, where we find joy in staying in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm your host, Lindsay Clyde, and I want to ask you, why do you stay? Hello and welcome back to the Why I Stay podcast, the podcast where we discover and find joy and research our own hearts, really, to find why we stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm Lindsay Clyde, your host, and today we've got Ben from For All the Saints here, Ben Hancock. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
And I'm excited because you are the first person with like an English accent on my podcast.
Oh, brilliant.
Welcome.
Brilliant. I should
You're the first.
Ramp it up into a Victorian accent. Hello, everybody. Wonderful to be here. Jolly
yes,
good.
yes. If we could have some Downton Abbey here today, that would be perfect. I'm sure our viewership would just like go through the roof. Anyway, we are so excited to have you here today. And listeners, if this is your first time being here, welcome. We are going to ask Ben some rapid fire, get to know you questions. Then we move into his exploratory questions where he describes his experience in living the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then he gets the question that's in the name of the podcast, the whole reason why we're here. Why does Ben stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? So Ben, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, Ben, first off, how old are you?
I'm 26.
Do you have any nicknames?
My mother calls me Benny Bobs, and also when I was young, I was called Gentle Ben because of my gentle nature.
I love it. So normally I ask, what state do you live in? But you are not in the States. So where do you live?
I suppose our version of a state would be a county, and I live in the county of Lancashire, which is very historically significant with the church. I wasn't born here, but that's where I live now.
Beautiful. What is your favorite food?
My favorite food is a British Sunday roast. Roast dinner with Yorkshire puddings, meat, potatoes, all the trimmings.
Oh, that sounds so yummy. What is a current hobby that you have?
Well, to be honest, my life is taken up with podcasting at the moment and podcast-related work, and I haven't had much time for hobbies. So I honestly, I can't even think of one. How terrible is that? And I even prepared for this. So in the past, my hobbies have been like painting. I've enjoyed painting. I've written some poetry before, things like that. And me and my friend, he'll compose music and I'll write lyrics for hymns. So I've always enjoyed doing that.
Wow, that is really neat. And I feel like podcasting is a hobby. It's my hobby right now. So whatever,
so,
your hobby and work kind of like blur the lines together, but that's okay. We'll count that, and painting and writing. That's wonderful. What is your favorite calling you've ever held?
Definitely has to be a full-time missionary in the Singapore mission. That nothing beats that one.
What is a controversial opinion that you hold? Like everybody loves to wear Crocs, but you hate them.
Okay. I actually love Crocs, but my controversial take is that I think the Super Bowl is rubbish. It's absolutely rubbish. I watched it in America. It was such a terrible viewing experience. I couldn't get into the flow of the game because there are commercials every 10 seconds. And yeah, so sorry, Americans, but soccer is so much better. The Super Bowl was terrible.
Oh, and this is perfect because I think this episode is actually airing close to the Super Bowl next year. And I honestly agree with that controversial opinion. It's like, I think people mostly just go to watch the ads, the commercials. So I don't know how, I'm definitely more of a non-Super Bowl American football watching kind of girl, but anyway, right there with you. Ben, what is your biggest dream?
One of my biggest dreams, and this might seem nerdy, and I actually told my wife about this the other week, is that I want to go to the Tabernacle Choir Christmas concert one year. Tabernacle Choir is very important to me. I love it, and I've always wanted to go to that. So maybe one year I'll be able to.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. If I happen to have a spare plane ticket and some tickets to that concert, I
Yeah.
will, I'll pass them over to you. I promise. I'll help you make
Yes,
that dream
please.
come true. Let's see. What is something that is the same about you now as it was when you were in high school?
I think I like to make people laugh. I'm a bit of a class clown, but maybe some things I say wouldn't be funny, but I might think they are. I tend to laugh at myself. When my wife comes to my family's house and everyone's there, we're all just kind of bantering and muttering and making jokes. Whereas when we have her family round, it's like serious conversation. So she's not used to it, but we like a good laugh.
And the last question is a bonus question that I just always make up on the spot for each individual guest. And yours is going to be this. Ben runs his own podcast, For All the Saints. And Ben, if you could get any guest to come on For All the Saints, who would it be and why?
Oh gosh, that's a great question, isn't it? I think selfishly, I think Winston Churchill would be really cool because I've been reading about him a bit more recently, and fascinating figure, obviously one of the most influential Englishmen in history, and it was really interesting in terms of how he became the man he was. But For All the Saints is a faith podcast, so it has to be President Nelson at 100 years old. That's my official answer.
Okay. Perfect. Well, I loved all those answers. It's fun to get to, have a little peek into your everyday life. But now we're going to move into the faith aspect of this podcast, our exploratory questions. And the first one we have for you is, Ben, what is an experience that increased your maturity or courage in living the gospel?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one because and it took me back instantly to a few years ago when actually in my family and in my personal life, I went through a stage. It was actually aligned with COVID lockdowns, where there was actually quite a lot of bereavement in my family, and some friends passed away. I was personal assistant for a world-renowned artist until the day he passed away. So it was just a coincidental, I guess, period where there was a lot of bereavement. And so I was thinking about the gospel a lot more seriously, I guess, and considering my testimony of the plan of salvation. And I had an experience one day that was exactly a month after my granddad had passed away. My granddad, who was not a member of the church, wrote me a little handwritten note on my missions. And I'd never received anything like that before from him. And so it was very precious to me. And it kind of, the way he wrote it was how he would speak. So he was Cockney. So he'd be, "You're right, mate. How are you doing?" Like that was his accent. And so I loved that note. And I tried to find it one day, a month after he passed away. And I frantically went through all of the cupboards, went through all of my boxes, everything. And I had this greatest fear that when I couldn't find it, I thought I had thrown it away. I thought I had thrown it in the bin accidentally. And I was frantic about it. I was really upset. I felt quite emotional about it. And then as I went to sleep that night, I had a dream where I was with my granddad and we were kind of together reflecting on some of our most treasured memories. It was just, it brought a lot of peace to me, and it helped me realize that, we can have material things in this world and physical things, but these things are mortal and we don't take them with us. But what really matters is that testimony that I'd been given at that time in my life, that the plan of salvation was true, and that we would be with our family members once more through our covenants, through the temple, through Jesus Christ ultimately. And so that experience matured me in that and made me think, you know what, those things are really nice, but they don't matter as much as the gospel. And so it kind of helped me to feel more resolve in my kind of taking seriously that plan of salvation.
When you were talking, in my mind, I'm trying to put together the rest of the story before you get to the end. And I think, oh, he's going to pray and he's going to find the note, right? Like in my mind, that's where I thought the story was going to go. But I think your answer, your ending was actually more beautiful. from the lesson that you learned about eternity and life after death and the veracity of the gospel, but also because I love when the Lord answers us in unexpected ways. It just kind of it reaffirms to me that he loves us and that he is merciful to us and that he knows our hearts and what we need personally and what would actually make the most difference. And honestly, like, I hope you found it sometime or you will find it in the future somehow. But in the meantime, what a beautiful testament to the reality of God's love for us and the truthfulness of the gospel. I love that. I love the twist. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, Lindsay, I did pray a lot. I did pray to
I'm
find
sure
it,
you
and I
did.
didn't find
Yes.
it. Well, I found it years later. I found it recently, a couple of months ago. So I have
Wow.
it safe now, and that was a beautiful moment to find it. But you know, I was at peace if I didn't find it, and it's a nice thing to have. You know what I mean? It's a keepsake. But
Mm-hmm.
for years after that, I just assumed that it was, you know,
Gone.
recycled into a cardboard pizza box or something, you know, for all I knew. But I did pray, and you know, that taught me a lot of lessons that day.
Yeah, and then it was answered in a different way. And then also years later, you were given what you were seeking for. I think that also just kind of shows, how many mortal years we have to wait to have our prayers answered in the way that we want or the way that we're hoping. God can still make it happen for us, even if we have to wait till the next life. If he can resurrect our bodies, he could have resurrected that out of a pizza box. You know what I mean? If we
Yeah.
really wanted it that badly, if we really needed it. But yeah, what a cool example. Thank you for sharing that with us.
It teaches you through grief as well, which is
Mm.
something that I've been able to take to other experiences similar, is what will soothe you. Will it be these kind of mortal physical things, like an old shirt that they used to wear, or a photo? And those things are nice, but really the thing that comes back time and time again, even in the most tragic of circumstances, is that the gospel of Jesus Christ that we know and love is the thing that provides the succor, the soothing, the comforting. That time and time again, that's what's always there, reliable.
And we can keep ourselves, if we utilize the atonement of Jesus Christ, we can keep ourselves in a position to feel that comfort. We can't always keep our notes. We can't always keep the old shirts. Sometimes things happen to those things, but we
Yeah.
can choose to be in a spiritual place so that the Lord can comfort us, can help us feel those abiding feelings of peace and knowledge of what is to come. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was an amazing example. Thank you for that. Let's go to question 2, which is, tell us about a miracle you've seen in your life and how was the Lord's hand apparent?
Yes. So this is kind of a strange experience that I had that
Great.
was
Give it to us.
miraculous for me, because
Yeah.
to be honest, Lindsay, I'm a home person. At least I was when I was younger. I didn't like to venture afar. I wasn't bothered about traveling to far distant lands, and so I did not want to serve a proselyting mission. Not because I didn't want to share the gospel, but because I was afraid of foreign foods, going to different places, different cultures. I wanted to get called on my mission to England, or to do like a service mission today, for example. That wasn't an option when I was young. So
Mm-hmm.
so I did go on a mission. I did serve a mission. I prepared to go without really thinking much about it. And when it came to the time, it was like, okay, we're going. And I this miracle happens at a point about a few days before I'm going, maybe a week and a half. And so I'm at the British Pageant, which is a play that the church puts on every 4 years in the UK that tells the story of the history of the church there. And it's watched by thousands. We build a theatre for it on the temple grounds. It's amazing. I happened to be playing a Scottish character called Robert Laird, who is hesitant to go to Nauvoo, but he goes because of the faith of his wife that eventually translates into his own faith. But he's saying, I don't really want to go, I don't want to go on that boat. You can go, but I'm going to stay here. But he does go. And so after doing this poignant scene where I kind of come to the culmination of this inner conflict, you walk up an actual ramp on the stage that is that is supposed to represent us walking onto the boat to get to Nauvoo. And it's an actual, like, the stage is shaped like a boat. It's a proper ramp. And as I'm walking in front of thousands of people, as I'm walking up this ramp, instead of the ship, I have a vision. An actual vision opens before my eyes, and I see the airport terminal. And I'm walking, and I look behind me, and instead of seeing my on-stage family, I see my actual family waving me off on my mission. This actually happened. And that moment was, it was a beautiful experience that kind of set me at peace. And that day, I said goodbye to my grandparents before I left. So it really hit home that day after that performance. And that just, that miracle, and there were continuous miracles from that point that enabled me further and further to kind of accept that I was going, and made me feel all right. But that in particular one was the first one I remember where I was like, okay, I'm going, I'm at peace with that, and I'm placing my faith in the Lord. And I had a great mission. I loved it. It was transformative. I think about it every single day. But I also think about that experience that was kind of strange, peculiar, but was a real tender mercy from God that enabled me in a very real way to accept that I was going and why I was going.
I have utilized this type of thinking in my life, and I don't know that I've ever had one that's specifically been given to me by God, but I imagine myself doing the thing that I know I should do, but it scares me, right? And we know that those images in our minds, like replaying in our minds what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what it's going to smell like, even can help us. And for you to have it be so powerfully witnessed to you that this is what you were doing and God knew you and he was going to be with you. He gave you this gift to let you know these things beforehand. It's incredible. And, if there are people getting ready to serve a mission and they feel nervous, what advice would you give to them?
I would say to trust in the faithfulness of God. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently in terms of since I've been married, really. It's kind of funny to think of Jesus having a nickname of being the bridegroom, as the bridegroom to his chosen, But actually, when I think of the devotion that I feel towards my wife and that she has to me, which is something I haven't experienced in my life before, that level of someone loving me and being devoted to me. It's a really beautiful, sacred feeling. And to think that Jesus Christ has perfect faithfulness in those tender moments when I was scared and vulnerable. And I was, if you ask anyone before my mission, they'll say, yeah, Ben really needed that push because I was frightened about going and very nervous. And in those moments, what I didn't get was kind of, you shouldn't be nervous. You know what I mean? It was Jesus in his faithfulness came to where I was and accepted those things that I was feeling and perfectly tailored experiences to me that helped me to feel good about it. And so I would say that those preparing, if they're sincere about going and they're going for the right reasons, then you can trust in that faithfulness. Absolutely.
The faithfulness of God. I love that phrase. It feels comforting, like kind of like a warm hug, and kind of like
it really is.
And like, you can do this. And sometimes when my kids are nervous about doing something, I will go over to them and I will hug them as tight as I can. And I say, I'm going to give you all my power, all my strength so that you can do this. And I go, and then I like pretend like I have no strength left because I've just, given it all to them. But, that's like what the Lord was doing for you there and what he does for us in his faithfulness. But he never runs out of that power, right? Like, he has infinite power to lend to us, to give to us if we are willing to receive it. And I think the key point there also is that there's we need to have that earnestness, the humility and the real feeling of, I can't do this alone, please help me. That's when I have found that power really comes flowing into my life and God is able to change my heart and give me strength.
The way I picture how it feels and the atmosphere is through a story by Elder Worthlin when he was a missionary with rumors of World War II happening around him. And the thing that comforted him is he walked to a quiet Bavarian village in the middle of the Alps late at night, and with snow and people preparing for Christmas. And in the darkness, there was a small chapel where light was pouring out of the door, and you could hear inside they were singing Silent Night. And that was the chapel where Silent Night was written. And just imagining that kind of cold, crispy Bavarian night and the glow of the chapel and the soft voice of this choir singing in this quiet village, that for me is the feeling. The feeling I get from that is the same feeling as how I picture those tender experiences when the faithfulness of God is revealed in a true manner, which kind of may be a weird analogy,
No, I
but
love
that's
it.
just how I get it. You know what I mean? That's how I picture it. That's how I feel it.
Yeah, I think that is actually really, really beautiful imagery. And that makes me think of how when I have been saved or changed in my circumstances through Jesus Christ, it's often not that he changes the circumstances. Like you're still out in the cold, like, and it just changes the feel of the chill. Instead of it like hurting you, it excites you, or the fact that you're on the outside and you can see the church and the comforting is coming, even though you're still in the circumstances that you are. Like the people of Alma, when Amulon is putting all these things upon their backs, and the Lord doesn't immediately deliver them. He makes their backs stronger so that they somehow mentally, physically don't feel the same weight of their situation as they did before. And I think that is very powerful, and even sometimes more powerful than him extracting us immediately from the uncomfortable circumstances, the difficult circumstances that we find ourselves in during our lives.
Yeah, and this is like, how do we reconcile sometimes with a God that doesn't necessarily always intervene and just change the correct way? You can only reconcile that with earnestness and sincerity in your faith, to know and to have felt that fire glow, and the soft singing in the distance. That's when you can answer those questions. And usually you have to go through a bit of suffering or a leap of faith to be able to understand that, I think. And, I think that's noble.
It is a noble pursuit. Thank you for sharing it with us with that. And I also come up with these images in my mind. So never apologize for sharing those. I think they're really poignant. So it's great. It was perfect. Question number 3 is, when have you had to go on faith because a prompting didn't make sense? What did you learn?
This is a very recent thing that I've only recently shared on my own podcast. I haven't really gone into detail about it, but basically, for a number of reasons, I've had kind of a serious health challenge this year, which is something I haven't necessarily experienced before. And it's been slightly debilitating, and it's been challenging for me. It's been one of the hardest things I've gone through. And so when going through that, I found myself frustrated and almost at times a little bit bitter, because I've had blessings, wonderful blessings, people putting my name on the temple prayer roll, people fasting for me fasting, everyone praying.
Yeah.
And there was no relief and there were no answers coming, nothing. When I went to doctors, they would kind of fob me off, and then I'd pay for specialist doctors, and they misdiagnosed it and they got it wrong, and they were giving me similar things. And it was just like, man, there's no answer here. And I've done what I thought I was supposed to do, which was turn to God, right? And there was a time when it was really difficult on a Sunday, and my wife and I were in the kitchen and we had music and the spoken word on. As I said before, Tabernacle Choir, very important to me. I love them a lot. Throughout my whole kind of faith journey in life, there are Tabernacle Choir along the way, faithfully. The new spoken word chap, Derek Porter, I think his name is, gave a talk serendipitously on facing health challenges with hope. And it was a really sweet message. And after that, the choir sang, "It is well with my soul."
I
And
love that
so
one.
part of those lyrics, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul, and things like that. And I just we recognized that as a big blessing, that it was almost like they were speaking to me. I was so captivated watching, as though they were speaking through the screen to me. And it was it was such a cool experience to feel that. And then I've been enamored with this book for a while, and I haven't actually finished reading it. I've just been dipping in and out of it because life's been so busy. But it's Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis, and it's a myth, but it's a myth about coming to know yourself and your relationship with God. I would recommend it. It's not a big book, but Orwell, a character, she has this brilliant quote that I read during the height of this illness. It really comforted me, and it said, "I know now, Lord, why you utter no answer. You are yourself the answer. Before your face, questions die away. What other answer would suffice?" So from this experience and the experiences before, the bitterness kind of fled away kind of instantly. And I realized my mission was to fill my life with light, that I had to do something about it. And as soon as I started doing that, again, the circumstance didn't necessarily change straight away. I'm still kind of suffering with it, in a much, a much better way though. But my capacity to deal with it, my faith increased so much. And that was the true antidote for me, was being able to cope with it better and be close to God, where previously I had actually realized from that I distanced myself from God quite a lot, because I was kind of angry that my prayers hadn't been answered in the way I would like, and that kind of no prompting had come or anything. Kind of felt alone. And as I began to fill my life with light, that faded away very quickly, and I felt the closeness of God, and again, that faithfulness. And so, yeah, I would say that. And I've shared 3 kind of key defining experiences of my life spiritually, and they might sound kind of like, oh, well, Ben's had all these big experiences, but actually, if I hadn't recorded them and remembered them and added gravity to them, they would have been fleeting moments that I would have forgotten about. But
Yes.
if we allow them, these tender mercies can transform us and can become precious, key defining moments in our lives. I really believe that. So these aren't necessarily like massive experiences. Obviously, when we put them in story mode, they sound big, and you might think, oh, well, I haven't had any of these experiences. But actually, I think everyone has. I think we have them every day. And if we cling to them and think about them more, we actually realize that they are quite grand experiences that we're having every day, that we allow to be fleeting moments sometimes.
Those are the 2 points that I have taken from what you've just said. Is one, we have to remember, we have to write these things down and then review them often. We need to remember what the Lord has done for us, because it's that memory of the light pouring out of the church with the soft singing in the background. We need to be able to picture that in our minds and to remember we will be there again. There might be times when we feel very distant from that church, and sometimes that we're standing on the doorstep, or, even inside, just completely on cloud 9, feeling God's love and his glory, and just feeling on top of the world spiritually. But those moments don't last. And so how can we hold on in the darker moments, in the difficult moments? It's by writing them down. And I mean, one prayer we can always know that God will answer is to increase our capacity. And that was actually my words for this new year, this 2024. I asked for, and I thought about, and I worked towards having increased capacity to get me from what I was able to accomplish in a day or spiritually on January 1st is vastly different from what I'm able to accomplish today. And I know it's because the Lord gives us his strength. That's been a common theme of this episode, I feel like, today, but we can ask for that. He's not necessarily going to take our health situations and completely heal us in a moment. Maybe sometimes he does, but along with the prayers of healing that we ask for, we can always ask and know he will answer with giving us increased capacity to withstand, to be joyful, to hold on just a little bit longer. I've had those prayers answered over and over again, and you're another witness to that today. So thank you for sharing that with us.
No. Thank you for asking the questions and giving me an opportunity to. It's interesting, at the start of what you just said, you basically, word for word, paraphrase the purpose of the Book of Mormon, right? In the introduction, it says, "Remember how merciful the Lord hath been." And that's essentially what you said at the start. So that's the purpose of the whole Book of Mormon, is to do that. And so in our own lives, we should certainly be be doing that. And remember as well, when we feel that no answers are coming when we want them, we can remember what Orwell says, until we have faces. You yourself are the answer. Before you, all answers disappear, and so if we feel like we're not getting much and we're doing all the right things, Elder Bednar would say, don't worry, keep going. And I think that's another way of putting that, is just continue to fill your life with light, and you'll be just fine. Yeah.
Wonderful. Perfectly said. This has been so amazing to have you here. Thank you for taking the time, Ben. So are you ready for the final question?
I think so.
I need to put on my announcer voice for this. Ben, why do you stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
I stay in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because I really believe that Joseph Smith saw God in Jesus Christ. And I've had spiritual experiences and kind of moments in my life where I have thought about that and really asked God sincerely. And I have felt that that is the truth, and that the Book of Mormon is true. Even when I have moments where I'm kind of like, oh, I have a question about this. The Book of Mormon is true. It is the stumbling block that anyone facing doubt kind of has in front of them of, is the Book of Mormon true or not? And it is true. I know that with all of my heart. I do know that to be true. And I grew up in schools where I was ridiculed for being a member of the church. I was the only member of the church in, I think, all of the schools that I went to. Maybe, I think in sixth form, which is like college kind of thing, we had another member of the church in there. But growing up, it was always a completely different culture to what everyone else was going through. So it would have been very easy to, even if I believed in God, to go off and be a Catholic, go off and be an Anglican. But again, I believe Joseph Smith was a prophet, and then he did see God in Jesus Christ. And I believe in the Book of Mormon, and those two things, and the prophet, all of it, the whole package. Yeah, I've had such amazing, overwhelming experiences in my life that continue to testify that the restored gospel is true. And so that is why I stay.
Ben, perfect wrap up to this whole episode. Amazing testimony. Thank you for bearing witness of the prophet Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. We can't do it enough, honestly. They are of God. And anyway, this has been an amazing episode. We're so grateful for your time and for all the good that you're doing in the world, especially for all the saints. If anybody would like to check out his podcast, I will link it in the show notes below. And give it a listen. It's really cool to hear from saints all over the world, to see the experiences that they're having and how the church is growing in unexpected places. So, Ben, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. So what did you feel? Did you imagine the warm church with the singing, and you're standing out in the crunchy snow and the crisp winter weather? What did you feel during this episode? Because I want to know that, because a lot of times we need to keep ourselves in a spot to feel. God will work through our feelings often, but our feelings are so easily tossed about in the waves of life. How do we keep our feelings in line with what God wants us to hear through the Spirit? What in your life can you alter? Can you change so that God can speak to you through your feelings and you can trust those feelings? Interesting question, and something worth following. Anyway, guys, I want to bear my testimony of the restoration. Joseph Smith is a true prophet of God. He lives still. He's not gone. He still lives on the other side, and he was called to restore this gospel. I don't have all the answers for why things were restored in the way that they were, but I do feel the truthfulness of his calling as a prophet of God. And when I read the Book of Mormon, I know that it is the word of God. It is for our day. Real men who did live on this earth were called of God to write these records and save them for us. It is for our day, and it is a precious gift that we should not cast aside. I love the Book of Mormon, and I love this church, and I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here, supporting the podcast. If you'd like to come on, please email me, whyistaypodcast@gmail.com. We need testimonies. We need voices. We need your voice to hear your experiences and how God has showed up in your life and increased your capacity to live the gospel in a difficult, difficult world. Thanks so much for being here, guys, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
The Why I Stay podcast is a faith-based podcast exploring the lives and experiences of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This podcast is not produced or endorsed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but we do love that church. All rights reserved. And a great big shout out to Fast Sounds from Pixabay for the amazing and jammin' intro-outro music. Thanks, guys.